I'm proud and excited to announce that the new book, Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, is now available. I've put the links to grab your copy from Amazon worldwide in the show notes, and I can't wait to see what you think. As a thank you for listening to the podcast, email podcast@rntfitness.com with your receipt, and we'll send you the free ebook version to start reading immediately. If you like a sneak peek of what's inside, you can download the first chapter at rntfitness.com/book. Also, you've heard me talking about the power of journaling for a long time, so I'm happy to announce we've now got customized RNT journals in store. There's a mix of prompts and freestyle writing, which you can take a glimpse of on rntfitness.com/journal. Just a quick one before we get into this episode. If you're in the UK and you use supplements, I'd highly recommend checking out Reflex Nutrition, where they're giving up to 40% on all their range if you use the code PTRNT at checkout. I've been using Reflex for nearly a decade, with their microwave being one of my favorite whey proteins. It's grass-fed, hormone-free, and digests so well compared to most on the market. Check out their full supplement range, including all your transformation basics and plant-based alternatives on reflexnutrition.com, and use the code PTRNT at checkout for up to 40% off. On this episode of RNT Fitness Radio, I'm joined by performance coach and speaker, Cam Taj, to discuss a whole range of topics from differentiating love and fear-based decision-making, improving the education system, cultivating resistance, owning and developing your identity, and building the future you want to step into. Cam also has a specific segment here targeted at parents with children in the 6 to 20 age range to help them flourish in all aspects of life. He's also given listeners to the show a massive 50% off his Exam Success Academy, which I've linked in the show notes below. Let's dive in. So you mentioned you've learned a lot on the podcast. Tell me more about what you've learned. You said you could spend a whole episode talking about that, which I thought was always great to hear that.
I could do. You know what? I'll be honest. One of my favorite ones to listen to was Dr. DeMartini.
Yeah.
Talking about values, because as a coach, values are something that comes up all the time. You know, as I'm sure you know, you talk about the why behind your why, right? That's one of your concepts you talk about. And I think all of these things are trying to get people to question really what is it they want, but why is it they want it as well. And so I found his system for looking at values to be really interesting, because he has these kind of the questions. I actually went and downloaded his template afterwards and was trying to cross-reference it to see, okay, so he's asking these kind of questions to see where you're using your time, what kind of things you do in that way. The way that I was taught values came with a slightly different approach, I guess. And it just, to me, it's a beautiful thing because it shows how flexible we can be about things like uncovering our values. And in the end, as long as it resonates with us and gives us clarity, there's no right or wrong way or right or wrong thing in that sense, as long as you have clarity as to what it means.
You said you cross-referenced it. What were you cross-referencing it to?
With my own way of eliciting values from my clients.
Okay, so, do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I really like the system with values of looking at them kind of as things that you move towards, so things that you want to attain, and then things that you want to avoid, things that you're trying to avoid. So I think of it as carrots and sticks. You know, you've got this carrot that you're trying to move towards and attain. So, and you can label that whatever you want to: success, peace, freedom, security, things that you want to move towards and attain. And you have these sticks you're trying to avoid being hit with. You know, I want to avoid failure. I want to avoid rejection. I want to avoid disappointing others. I want to avoid boredom. You know, I want to avoid being controlled. And I find that a really useful framework, just because we're all motivated by a combination of these things. And because we've been raised in these, let's say, you know, academic environments and systems where a lot of the time the stick is being used to motivate us. I've got ethnic parents. The stick was used to motivate me at points, you know, as I'm sure you've experienced as well. So for me, it was one of those things which I really like that model. And then the way I like to break it down is to kind of look at it as, and by the way, this is not my original concept with values. So we look at means and ends values. So things like money, for example, is not an end value. It's a means to an end. And we want to try and uncover, well, what is it that money's giving you? Is it a sense of success and fulfillment? Is it a sense of security? Is it that sense of having that freedom? So I like looking in terms of means and ends, and then you can break it down to aspirational versus operational. A lot of the challenges we face when identifying our own values are around the fact that we wish we had this value to move towards, say, but really we're operating on a different level. So really common one is we say, yeah, I want to move towards success. That's what's driving me. When really we're trying to more avoid failing, moving away from failure. And you see that in people's behavior, right? Your behavior will showcase that, because in those kind of people who, let's say, their stick for avoiding failure is higher in the hierarchy of their values than their carrot for success, they will be more risk averse. They're going to avoid a situation whereby failure is likely, even if the chance of success are still there, because that's what's on top of their hierarchy.
How do you differentiate? That's an interesting one. How do you differentiate between those who are driven by success of a greater purpose or just trying to avoid failing?
Right. That's a great question. And I think with that, it depends on the situation. So let's say that you're a student, right, who wants to achieve great grades. Let's say you want to go to Cambridge. And on the journey to going to Cambridge, there's like certain steps that you want to take in terms of your academic performance. At some point, you realize that perhaps you are valued higher, let's say, or you feel like more loved by your parents and more this and more respected by your peers even, let's say, when you're performing well and achieving these great grades. And what happens is you become very afraid of losing that, of not being able to meet those expectations you set for yourself. So what happens is you try to perhaps hold back now. You maybe downgrade your ambitions. You say, you know what, forget Cambridge, that's way too ambitious. I'm never going to get there. You lower that ambition that you have. Because in other words, the risk of encountering a failure of not getting into Cambridge outweighs the joy you'd essentially feel at getting there, because it's so unlikely in your mind to do that. So what happens, you start to sell yourself short. You start to perhaps create more self-sabotaging behaviors to justify and create these excuses as to why it's not right for you, you don't fit in, you wouldn't want to go after that.
Is that an identity problem?
Yeah.
Is that an identity problem more than anything?
Exactly. So it links in with that idea of self-identity. You know, there's a beautiful quote by the Zen Buddhist, the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, where it says, "Out of a fear of the unknown, we prefer suffering that is familiar." And by familiar, we're talking about what we identify ourselves as. So spot on, exactly. It's about that identity. So if you have an identity of I'm a smart person, and it comes with a fixed mindset whereby you're very afraid of hitting this limit and finding out you're not really smart, you'll try and avoid any situation which challenges the identity of a smart person. So again, you'll procrastinate till the last minute because you have this excuse then of, oh, well, it was just because I did it the night before. Surely if I'd given it my all, I could have done a lot better. And therefore it still protects the identity as, yeah, I'm still smart. I'm still okay.
One of the things we talk about in the investment phase, you know, the phase 4 of our journey, is that when people go from getting into the shape of their life to try and stay in shape, a key part of that is a change in identity, because you have to let go of your old self. And one of the reasons why people fall out of shape is typically poor lifestyle choices, certain destructive behaviors, certain things they're dealing with in the past, and they use food and poor lifestyle choices to get into bad places. But when you're suddenly in the shape of your life, you now have this new body, this newfound energy and this new life, but you're still stuck where you were 20 kilos ago, 25 kilos ago. So you've got an identity crisis that's so difficult to kind of get out of. And I see it all the time, where the biggest struggle for someone who's got in shape and now sees the benefits but wants to stay there is, how do I fit into this new identity? And this can be applied in so many contexts that I'm sure you're an expert in. So tell us more about making that identity shift and breaking through.
So one of my foundational philosophies around this is, you can't change what you don't first acknowledge. And I really believe that the first thing we've got to do when it comes to set that identity is to go, okay, what is the old identity? Let's give it a label. Let's try and understand what it is. Who do I see myself as? And who I saw myself as before? Because as we said, out of that fear of what's unknown, this new territory we haven't gone into, we'd almost take on that suffering that's unfamiliar, and we're going to tend to that old behavior. Reminds me of actually Dr. DeMartini's podcast, where he was giving that case of the lady who was, I think, overweight, obese, but because it protected her in so many ways, it served her, she was going to stick to it. So the first thing is you acknowledge, what is the identity? And then, why is it serving you? What benefit is it giving you? Is it the safety of what's known? Is it perhaps a protective mechanism from when you were a kid, in that it gave you something, it gave you a sense of comfort? You know, so many of these mechanisms form in our early adolescence when we don't quite have this ability to rationalize what's happening around us. And we develop these coping mechanisms based on essentially a system where we don't have fully developed prefrontal lobes or even the emotional intelligence and understanding to understand what's happening around us in that way. So we're just attaching these things, these interpretations, and we feel discomfort and we go, I don't want to feel discomfort. What will bring me a sense of joy, of comfort and familiarity? So acknowledging that change is definitely acknowledging what it is that's serving you, number one, why it's serving you, number two, and then it becomes about what are the reasons why this new identity is now going to benefit you, and who do you want to become? A replacement identity. So one of the frameworks I do with clients, it's an old coaching framework for goal setting. It's called the be, do, have. Instead of saying I want to have a six-pack, we start with who do you want to become? If you choose the right person in terms of who you want to become, as a byproduct of becoming that person, you're going to have that six-pack. And it's almost like, this was me when I was a kid, by the way, I'm giving an example. So when I was 15 years old, all I wanted, Akash, was to have a six-pack. And the reason why, not internal, not my moving towards success or moving towards health or freedom, none of that. It was because, one, I wanted to get girls. Yeah. Or, let's be honest, it was actually being afraid of being rejected by girls. So it was a stick for avoiding rejection. And the second was I wanted to be accepted by my male peers. And we talked about something like toxic masculinity. I felt very self-conscious because I was short. I was a little bit skinny. I didn't feel like I had anything on offer there. And I felt very emasculated compared to a lot of other guys. So these were all coming from things of trying to assert a sense of like, I'm a man, like you got to approve of me, acknowledge me kind of in that way. And so basically I went in this program, 3 weeks, Akash, 3 weeks, I stuck to it. I did my sit-ups, I was eating a good diet, I was doing leg raises, stuff like that. And then 3 weeks later, I look in the mirror, no change, nothing's happened. I look in the mirror and I'm just like, it's just never going to happen, is it? And that night I binged on pizza. Next day I woke up, looked in the mirror and I had that pizza belly, that bloatedness. And so I went and had more leftover pizza. Didn't do my workouts that day or Sunday the next day. On the Monday, I went to tennis training. I was playing competitively at that stage. My coach said to me, how's the six-pack goals going? I said, it's terrible. It's terrible. Did it for 3 weeks. Saw no progress. And I went and binged on pizza. And I didn't want to do my exercises because it was all pointless. And I'm never going to get a six-pack. And he said to me, listen, forget about getting a six-pack. Focus on being the best athlete you can be. I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, be the best athlete you can be. Because if you're doing everything to be this identity of as an athlete, by virtue of doing that, by virtue of doing the things to become this identity, you're going to end up having a six-pack anyway. He said, look, an athlete will slip in their diet. They might have a cheat day. The next day, they're right back onto it. They'll look in the mirror and see no progress and they'll go, okay, do I need to A, trust the process more, or B, change my strategy, right? That's one of your 3 S's, right? It's the strategy as well. So it's one of those things which it really stuck with me. And then when I learned about coaching frameworks, I thought, I love this framework, this idea of instead of what do I want to have, you start with, okay, who do I want to be? First of all, let me write down, who do I want to be? So I've actually got mine on my wall up there right now. Who do I want to be? And I've got them in my career, who I want to be. I want to be a world-renowned coach, speaker, and author. And around that, I write these terms. What does it mean to me to be that? I want to be inspired, charismatic, focused, compassionate, these things. Then I want to be, with regards to my family, I want to be the best, son to my parents I can be, the best partner to my girlfriend I can be, the best brother to my sister. What are the things that come there? Respectful, compassionate again, understanding, these kind of words. And then in terms of my personal, I want to be the healthiest version of myself. I want to be the best learner I can be. I want to be the mentally healthiest version of myself, the most peaceful version of myself. And again, I write in there what that means. So resilient, honorable, authentic, these kind of terms. And then from there I go, okay, I want to be this person. What will I be doing each day, every other day, each week, what time, to become this person? So that even on a low day, even on a day where you don't have clarity about your long-term goals, you've got to change that strategy. There are these small actions you can take each day to get you 1% closer to being that person. So you have that structure, I guess, around moving towards that.
So you set the future state and then you think, well, you walk it back and think, how do I get there? And then do you set yourself checkpoints along the way? So let's say, for example, your first one was being a world-renowned speaker, coach. What sort of barometers and checkpoints are you using to guide you there?
So amazing. So for me, that's where I then go into I drop into this have column. So that's where afterwards, because for me, again, I think And the reason why, I'll tell you the reason why I don't actually set myself too many structures with it, is because honestly, things change. Your values change, you grow, scenarios happen, COVID happens, and you've got to update the metrics you're using to define this. I had certain financial goals this year I wanted to meet. COVID hit. I had this course that I created for students for their exams that I wanted to really, really get out there this year. Exams got cancelled. Now, if I were to hold on to that as the barometer for my success this year in becoming this person, I think I was going to end up pretty miserable. And I actually look at that and go, you know what? I do feel that disappointment. I'd set my expectations a bit high here. They'd actually upgraded from these goals I had to these expectations, which were now starting to hold me back. And I said, okay, I need to actually change that and adapt that. So I do have certain things. So I have certain, for example, more personal ones. It's meeting certain goals in terms of financially provide for my family. Then I have things in terms of number of people I impact. So number of talks I'm giving, number of people impacted. I have things along my kind of broader goals. So within 5 years, this is the number of people I want to have impacted. And then I have a separate thing, which is more of a strategy side. So how do I want to do that? So this year, for example, is when I've been exploring podcasts as a way of, trying to reach more people here and there. And then so that becomes more of the strategy side now. I try to keep that away from less be, do, have form. And the reason for it is because I want to know that even if my strategy is falling apart, or I'm feeling very disheartened because a goal hasn't been fulfilled, hasn't been fulfilled, I still have some foundation I can come back to become 1% better every day in terms of moving towards this person I want to be.
You have that strong belief that no matter what you do, you're going to work towards that B state.
Exactly, yeah.
Amazing. So we were talking about the identity shift. I don't know if we went off on a tangent there, or if that was part of the sort of shed the skin, so to speak, of stepping into a new identity. Did we cover that? Is that the reason? Is that what you need to do? In that you said that once you've acknowledged your old self, the next step is to go to the future.
Yeah.
Is that it? Like what you just said? Is that the framework?
Acknowledge the old self. Understand how old self has been serving you. I think that's the hardest one, right? Every behavior we have, every identity we've created, behavior and identity being different things, another tangent we can go down on. Every identity we create, it's understanding how it served us. And again, this is where oftentimes I've found with clients I've worked with, I will kind of refer them on to therapists and people who are specialized in helping to elicit that, because sometimes understanding your past story is very helpful to understand where these things came from. But I think in and of themselves, they won't then cure the problem. Then you've got to have the future focus. Okay, and now where do I want to go? Within these steps, there are loads of different activities and kind of things that can be done to break that down. But I do think on a high level, it is nice to keep it simple. Yeah. What is the old state? Why is it there? How's it been benefiting me to have this? And then with regards to a new state I want to create, first of all, you got to have this, look at like, I guess the future utility it's giving you, like how is it benefiting me to hold on to this state? So emotionally, and then rationally, what evidence do I have that supports that I can kind of believe in myself to have this state? So in other words, you don't feel this imposter syndrome. If you're saying I'm an athlete, you don't think of that label and go, I have this imposter syndrome because I'm not really an athlete. You actually, here are all the ways which I am becoming more of an athlete every day. Here's what the term an athlete even means to me. And it's not, I'm running like Usain, I'm sprinting like Usain Bolt. It's not, I have this body shape or something like that. It can actually be about, okay, I'm an athlete because of the way I structure my sleeping habits and my eating habits and my exercising habits. So that's the kind of way that I like to think of it.
So that's almost talking about identity in that you're not going to overnight just turn into this new person, but really you're stepping into a new skin and you got to fill that skin out.
I love that expression. Yeah.
And it's a process, because people who may be listening to this from a sort of how do I stay in shape mentality, or how do I step into this new role of a business or whatever it may be, where it's completely different and you're new and you're in a position you've not been in before, then it can be easy to feel disheartened when you can't put tangible checkpoints on how you step into a new skin.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's almost like you've just got to keep doing the things you said there. Like, what if it's, I want to be a better athlete? What are the things that, and over time, your new state, it will become the new norm for you.
Yeah. And the thing with tangible checklists is they're a wonderful thing to have. Like, I think everyone should have their own set of those things. I just think we've got to be more flexible at adapting them, because what happens so often is we underestimate something or we overestimate something. And it turns out to leave us feeling essentially a bit deflated when it doesn't manifest in the way that we visualized it doing. And I think being able to actually be, so one of the biggest things that I kind of talk about is a lot of us have these voices of, I guess this quite harsh voice to ourselves that we speak with in terms of how we want to make ourselves do something. We've got to almost bludgeon ourselves or beat ourselves with a stick to be able to go and do this. And I genuinely feel like self-forgiveness and compassion, self-compassion and non-judgment are one of the best ways that you can say, I've got this checklist I want to achieve. I didn't take action towards it today. If you start to beat yourself up about that, what you're essentially doing is reattaching to the old identity of, see, I'm just someone who doesn't follow through. I'm a procrastinator. I'm a failure. I am not this person. I am this old person that I was, right?
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're basically focusing on a negative self-image of who you believe yourself to be. Self-forgiveness, instead of focusing on what's wrong with you, focuses on how you can be better. And I don't mean some kind of half like, oh yeah, it's fine. That's not, we know inwardly we don't feel good about that. I mean a genuine thing of going, you know what? Yeah, I didn't follow through today. Let me try and understand why that is. And most of all, let me know this is not an easy process. Change is messy, especially in those middle stages. It's messy. As you said, trying out a new skin, it feels foreign, it feels uncomfortable. It's one of those things that we've got to readapt to. And I think having that self-forgiveness is vital on those days when we fall short, to go, you know what? This is what happened today. Here's the loss. I acknowledge it. Here's the lesson. Why did this happen? What am I trying to learn from this? And then here's the action. Here's what I'm going to try and do differently tomorrow. That's a framework I use with some of my mentees who are, again, trying to build this habit of resilience. Let's acknowledge the loss, not find methods of self-aversion to distract ourselves from it. Let's try and identify the lesson. Let's look for the lesson inside this. Let's create meaning from this experience.
One of the transformation formula we use is introspection plus action equals transformation. And I think what you're describing there is it's so aligned. And like I'm just nodding along in my head. We use the analogy of the muck. And what I'm thinking about there with what you're talking about is someone like swimming in their own muck and they're just trying to clean it all off, but it's not going to be an easy way to get out of that pool.
No, I love that,
powerful.
man.
That's powerful.
It is, man. It is introspection plus action,
So Cam, for the listeners who don't know, me and Cam went to the same school. He was a couple years below me. And you've also followed a slightly untraditional path, especially from the school we came to, where the school we both went to, I'd say 90% of people did one of four things: economics, law, medicine, and what's the other one?
Engineering, probably.
Yeah, maybe, and maybe engineering. Yeah, so it's one of those four sort of standard subjects.
Yeah.
You went to Cambridge University, so one of the best universities in the world. Got a first-class degree. Landed a job in a consultancy firm. Everything's looking pretty rosy, all sort of aligned with the traditional path. Then you decided to quit and take a new path. Well, tell us more about this story, about what's the basis of this all.
Yeah, let's do it. I don't want to get caught monologuing in this. I really don't. But just to clarify, we were at Q Boys together, and you were the year above me. And my first memory of you, Akash, was playing chess on Monday night chess clubs. That was my first memory of you. I think we were in Orange Group or something like that. That was my first memory, guys. So those of you listening, Akash was a chess player. That's my first memory of him. And then I think the next memory I have of you was, I think would be years on afterwards when you started hitting the gym.
Oh yeah, were you part of the gym club?
Well, I wasn't. At the time, I could see it was one of those things. So I think it was you. There are a few others in your year who you'd all go together.
Bilal.
Yeah, exactly. Minnow, was it?
Minnow, yeah.
Yeah, you guys would all go to the gym together, and you start to notice these kind of guys walking around with a bit of swagger, And I was like, I gotta get some of what these guys are having. And I say basketball at school. So just a bit about me and that. So for me, my parents were Iranian. They came here during the revolution, and I was really lucky in that academically. Early on, I kind of found that, okay, I've got a grasp of these subjects, and I managed to get to Q Boys, good grammar school. I was bullied at QE. I was bullied because I was the smallest kid in my year group, and I was quite smart and not good at sports. Being smart and not good at sports was not a good kind of combination to have. You do get branded as a bit of a nerd, basically, right?
Despite everyone in the school being a nerd.
Well, here's the thing, right? But
Yeah.
even then, you separate yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because like I was doing well. I was in top set in most subjects, and I was terrible at rugby and terrible at cricket and pretty terrible at athletics. And I remember I made it to like the cross country training team, and I was like, yes, I'm now going to be the most popular person alive. And suddenly, just no, it's not happening. Around that time, that was when I had this realization of, okay, if I want to be approved of by my male peers, and if I want to perhaps get respect from women, I might need to change something about me. And it's a very insecure place it came from at that stage, because when you're 13, 14, what do you know? You know, you look at the guys who are having success in these regards, and they all fit these kind of definitions in terms of the way they portray themselves. So I got really into tennis and basketball. And tennis was a sport I just kind of fell in love with and just really enjoyed. Basketball I picked up because I was short, and I wanted to prove to myself and everyone around me that it would never limit me from my goals. And so that was my kind of sports origin story. And I started getting really into fitness because I was not a natural athlete. So I was playing tennis with quite high level kids, and the coaches would keep me around just because my fitness and commitment was second to none. These kids would sweep me off the courts, but they could not beat me in a bleep test. So the coaches were like, until you beat him in a bleep test, he's sticking around here. Now, I'd never cut corners. It was always about, for me, like getting essentially one more rep out of myself whenever I could. You know, I want to be able to do one more push-up than everyone else, one more set of sprints than everyone else. And I had this real underdog mentality when it came to the sports side of things. And so went through QE. When it came to Cambridge, it was hilarious. It was one of those situations where I didn't think I had a chance of getting in. I never even thought about it on my radar. And then the school were like, well, look, you did well in your GCSEs. You should apply. And I was thinking, well, all right, fine. I guess I've got nothing to lose by applying. I really set my expectations quite low for it. Had an interview which went terribly, and I thought went terribly. And since deconstructing it, I found that it actually went well in all the ways that it's meant to go, in that I made mistakes, but I also had to catch myself, adapt and correct. So I went and showed that I'm a teachable candidate. And I ended up getting an offer, which I scraped through. And, you know, I don't know if you wouldn't know this, but I got an offer to do engineering, chemical engineering at Cambridge University. A-star and further maths was specified as the grade I needed. And at the point of getting that offer, I just got 28% in my mock exam. So I had about 4 months to go from 28% to a 90% average. And I remember in that moment being like, Cam, this is a crossroads. I can just say, forget it. Cambridge is not worth it. This is not worth it in this life. There's no chance you're even going to get in, even if you do your best. Imperial's good enough. Loughborough's good enough. Let's relax, enjoy this year, enjoy this journey. And a part of me just going, yeah, but what if in like 30 years time you're looking back and thinking to yourself, what if I'd actually gone for it? And what if I had been good enough? And that was the first taste I ever got of this idea of it is better to know and be disappointed than to not know and always wonder what could have been. You know, this path of least regret, which is something I've really stuck to, as this, I want to do whatever I can to mitigate regret as much as I can, to look ahead to the future and think, how much will I regret this in this way? And that's helped me get over my fear of failure to a large extent. I went for Cambridge and I ended up meeting it just about. Got in there and was struck massively by imposter syndrome because I did not believe I belonged there. I thought I just got there out of luck, despite this track record of this last year saying I'm going to give my best no matter what happens. I violated that in my first year. And I said, you know what? I'm so afraid of being proven to be stupid here in Cambridge because I've always been the smart kid. I'm so afraid of it that I actually held back my best to protect that identity as a smart kid. I violated that rule. And I felt so disappointed that year because I got the lowest grade in my entire college for my first year course. And I got an email from my director of studies saying, this is, quite serious. I know you've said you found it quite challenging here, but we're going to need to have a talk about this. You're switching course next year to a more engineering focused one, but you should really ask for help if you need it, basically, which is very supportive of them. Second year, I said, no matter what happens, I'm giving my all. I'm going to make this happen. And I ended up giving the best I could, especially towards the last term. I ended up missing the grade I needed by 0.2%. So like that nightmare just kind of coming to reality, coming to fruition like that. And man, I cried. I was in tears when I got that result because you invest your all into everything, right? And I imagine you have this with your business. You have this with relationships. We have this with our health and fitness journeys. You invest that much emotional energy into anything and the outcome isn't as you want. It is deeply disappointing. And I remember going through that and feeling those tears. And then a few weeks later, I remember feeling proud of myself as well, because I'd essentially conquered this fear of my best not being good enough, which is the epitome of this growth mindset, right? It's saying my best today may not be good enough, but my best tomorrow can be better than my best today. My best can get better every single day. You're asking about my coaching journey and how I suddenly took this transition from engineering. Well, the seed was planted in my third year in Cambridge, because I went into that year, despite feeling proud of myself for having given my best, really low on confidence because my results had not showed that for the last few years. On top of that, the relationship I was in, I'd met a girl, she'd broken up with me that summer, and I'd attached so much of my self-worth to this relationship. Because in my mind, I was still this small, skinny, unattractive kid who could never get a girl. She had wanted to be with me. She now was validation that I'm an attractive man. Talking about toxic masculinity, right? And so I had this situation that had ended, and I felt so disheartened because of it. Being rejected from every internship I'd applied to that year. Turns out a Cambridge degree or getting one on track to one is not going to be a guaranteed job in any sense whatsoever. So that was quite shaking as well. The worst part of it, my coping mechanism for life up till that point was hitting the gym, basketball and tennis. And I'd been overtraining in my second year to compensate for the stress I was feeling. And I basically messed up my back pretty seriously while doing squats and deadlifts. I've got a bit of lordosis in my spine, which basically is just a bit more arched towards the lower lumbar region. And I'd been squatting with form that I was told was the right form, but was not suited to my body. I've got very long femurs compared to the rest of it. You've got to change your form, have a wider stance. I didn't have that. And I ended up making it so bad that went to the physio, said, look, your spine's starting to compress. There's real pressure on your discs here. For the next 6 weeks, I couldn't put my socks on in the morning without doing stretches. And that was shaking. It was really shaking. And then it wouldn't get better because I was in such a psychological point of stress. And I really do feel there's this mind-body connection when it comes to the psychological stress we take on in our bodies. So basically what had happened is a lot of things had fallen apart very quickly in a short period of time. So I felt like when it comes to suffering in general, like, you know, I was never going through a phase where I was homeless, or I always had a roof over my head. I had food on the table and so on. But I'd fallen very far, very fast. And when you fall far fast, you're going to be bruised at the end of it. The worst thing I did, Akash, was I start telling myself this story to justify my fall. And I said, it's because I'm a failure and I've let down my family. I've let them down. And that is where things start to go wrong. And I started to go this period of very, very ill mental health in my first time back in my third year, such that I was constantly dropping out of Cambridge for good, but I was contemplating more serious things than that as well. And what changed was, the one thing I did well here was every night I'd come to my room, 8 p.m. after dinner, I'd just cry for 2 hours straight and journal. Just cry and journal and process these parts of me that I was so afraid to admit to. These insecurities from my childhood around the bullying, around being short, around this girl, around who I'd been in that relationship. You know, I'd become controlling. I'd become really insecure in that way. And just confronting them and acknowledging them and saying, Cam, you were this person. You've got to acknowledge that this is the why. And this is why you were being that person. And trying to do so, processing it through tears. I remember the point where the pain got too tough. And I started to kind of try and numb myself out to it. And I got a taste. I essentially went through a depression period whereby your emotional spectrum becomes so narrowed because you can't selectively numb emotion. If you numb pain, you're going to numb pleasure as well. You know, the neurotransmitters, the receptors in our brain, they don't work in such a way that you can selectively numb. And the one thing I did, the other thing that saved me, I asked for help. I realized I was going down a very, very downward spiral here. I was contemplating more serious things when it came to my life and my place in this world. And I said, my mum, she's a yoga teacher, mindfulness practitioner, therapist. She's been so immersed in this world of self-help for as long as I can remember. And I always looked down on it as this woo-woo thing that makes no sense. And I said to her, Mum, I'm done. I can't keep living the way I am. I need to shed the skin I'm in, to use your term, because it's not serving me. I can't. This way is not working. And I hit what I call this F-it threshold. I'm not going to swear. This F-it threshold whereby I could not anymore handle even thinking about what other people in the world thought of me. It was about my survival now and my well-being. And that's why my values are all around health and peacefulness as my top priorities because of this period of time I went through. And she introduced me to this world of mindfulness, of self-help. And you know what? The books themselves are a bit cliche, it's true. But when I did the activities in them, I felt very empowered. I fell in love with this idea, this model of self-empowerment through asking questions, not me giving you advice, me asking you these questions to elicit for yourself. And I know in your 7 phases of coaching, this is one of those phases, you know, there's multiple things you can do as a coach. But I fell in love with this idea of no one's telling me what I need to do. I get to figure it out for myself through these questions that are directing me towards where I've got to look. And that was when I was introduced to coaching. And I made a promise to myself that I'm going to use these tools on myself this year. I'm going to do Cambridge my way. I would rather fail on my own terms, doing it my way, stress-free, doing my meditation every night, cooking a healthy lunch and dinner every day, working when I want, how I want, and doing my back rehab and so on, than to succeed on someone else's terms and forever think that I will never be able to succeed in life on my own terms. I'll always have to live to the path others are walking down. And that was my first time deviating from that path well worn. I ended up getting a first class. And I felt this immense sense of like belief that maybe this will work. And of course it was eroded straight away because our mind is great at bringing up old evidence that no, this was a fluke. The other way is the right way still, because you look around you and everyone's doing it differently. And coming out of my 4th year, I did my master's. Coming out of that, I felt, well, I've got 2 options here. Either I go and start this coaching practice, but what's everyone going to think of me? This Cambridge engineer going and becoming a life coach? What's that about? They must just not have been able to cut the real world. They must not have been able to handle this, basically. And I said, you know, one last time I'm going to go for these consulting firms. This profession that in Cambridge was very glamorized as what you should be doing. Great paycheck, very prestigious. You fall into this prestige trap of I've always got to be one of this elite in this way. And I managed to get a job. I managed to get a great place at this multinational strategy consulting firm, tier 2 consulting firm called Roland Berger, very, very big in Germany and different parts of the world. And I did that, and it did 2 things. It unblocked this confidence block I'd had around maybe my work ethic isn't good enough. Because when you're working hours in consulting on projects from 9 till 2, 3 in the morning for 2 weeks in a row, you start to feel, you know what, I can actually work harder than anything I need. And it also built up my confidence in terms of being able to interact with other people and seeing myself actually excelling in a professional setting. And those 2 things got unblocked. And I remember an Uber ride back home at 4:30 in the morning where I was just like, if I take half the time I've invested into this and put it into something I love, how can I not succeed at that? I handed in my notice a few weeks later. 5 months I spent there. Left that job 4 years ago. Have not looked back since. So an unorthodox journey, but one that I would not trade for the world. And if it wasn't for those failures and setbacks and challenges and shedding that old skin, I would not be who I am today. I would not be where I am today.
Amazing. So they've all served you in a good way, no matter how tough they may have been at the time. Amazing story. You're in the coaching realm, but you have many sort of faces as a coach. And I know you do some work as a performance coach, but you also do a lot of work with the education system. And I think that's a fascinating topic to briefly explore, especially for a lot of our listeners who may have children between the ages of sort of 6 and 20, which I believe is your speciality here. Do you want to just dive into this and talk about some of your views on the education system, firstly, which might be a bit of a rabbit hole, but also around, because I know it's so personal to you, but the physical and mental health elements for children and young adults.
I'd love to. The education system pathway for me in terms of as a coach emerged very spontaneously. And it's why my whole thing with checklists and goals and stuff, I've become so much more flexible, because honestly, it came into the journey about 6 months into my coaching journey where I was just like, who can I serve the most right now? And I just think, well, I've been where students have been. Maybe I can actually work and help them, because my story from academics in terms of these setbacks and these pitfalls and then doing well, you know, from failing mocks to getting the A star to then messing up in Cambridge to then getting a first. I felt like there was a lot there in terms of optimal habits that I picked up. And I was like, okay, let me see if I can pass on some of this wisdom to students. And as I started to dig into it, I started to uncover a lot of my old past problems with the education system in terms of, and I used to get anxiety attacks every Sunday night before school because I hated it. I hated academics. I was good at academics, but I did not like academics. I loved sport. I loved going into school because I could play basketball in the mornings and train. But the academic side of things I did not like. And I felt like there's got to be something here where I can combine this experience that I've had with that system and the fact that Though I was good at academics, I was not a natural student. I just knew how to work hard and use the system in a way that I could. I thought, well, maybe I can put this together and combine it with my consulting knowledge in terms of thinking of life in terms of frameworks, essentially. And I came up with this concept called the 8 principles, which is essentially 8 principles towards attaining exam success, which I think all students would benefit from having. And I hope if you hear this, you'll think to yourself, these are really in line with the kind of things that you set in place to help your clients excel in their body transformation journey, their life transformation journey, really, if you think about it. And those 8 principles, 4 of them were for what I call the studying process, and 4 were around the studying lifestyle. And I deconstructed this through looking at the top Cambridge students and Oxford students who were getting the best grades, but also just doing great in their sports, doing great in their social lives, pretty stress-free. And so these eight principles, the first is time management. So they had good productivity skills. They knew how to prioritize and plan, and they could stick to their plans. They had good studying tools and techniques. This is the strategy. So for example, if you're in body transformation, this is the strategy to get them from where they are to where they want to be, very goal specific. They had mindset management on point. They could manage their stress and anxiety, manage self-doubt and low confidence, create sustainable motivation, which is an area I became very passionate about, how to help students create that, how to help professionals create that. And the fourth one was on-day performance. How can you take these elements, your preparation, and do them justice on the day? And I combine this with some of my background in sports and competitive sports because I played at university level with tennis and stuff like that. So I brought these together as the studying process. And then we had the studying lifestyle. The factors that will essentially, I guess, move the bar along as to how much our studying process can take us. And this is about optimizing in other areas of our lives. So physical activity and movement, right? The role of sports and exercise in optimal academic success. It's insane. There was actually a study done at Cambridge University between 2006 and 2015. They looked at 4,000 undergraduate students. And they found that of those 4,000 undergraduate students, the ones who did sports at a first team level and second team level, so you're looking at training between 4 to 7 times a week on top of your Cambridge academic studies, they were 5% more likely to get a first class grade than their peers and 10% more likely to get a 2-1. Right?
Impressive.
It's really, really impressive. And you think, well, what is it that's caused that? Well, one, you have the community element of sports and fitness and training, like the Cambridge powerlifting team, incredible community that those guys are in. Like they all support each other. It's outside of the academic bubble. The second thing is in terms of physical activity and the amazing benefits it has in terms of the endorphins, in terms of brain-derived neurotrophic factor being released, in all of these elements that help to manage that. The third is the time management skills. If you've been balancing sports at this level through your childhood, you're going to actually be able to manage the stresses of somewhere like Cambridge more effectively as well. It's ingrained into your habit. So there are all these reasons they attributed to it, but physical activity and movement plays such a role in that. The second pillar was nutrition and hydration. Again, you've got to fuel your body and brain in the right way to get the best out of it. The third is about sleep. I don't know if you read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, but I mean, for any athlete, for anyone, that's a must in terms of how much it impacts your learning, your recovery, any element of that. And the fourth one, support groups. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift, inspire, support, challenge you in that positive way, as opposed to those who drain you, draw you back, pull you back into old habits, hold you towards your old skin. I think a lot of problems a lot of us have with new identities is other people hold us towards our old self. They try and hold us to how they knew us before. Bit of a tangent.
So many parallels to the transformation journey there. So many parallels. And this is you're talking about for education and doing well at school. So how do you translate that then let's say as a parent, because you speak to a lot of parents, don't you? How do you now translate that from the parent to the child so that they don't get distracted by their peers and the pressures and all the things that come with it?
So one thing I often say to parents is, look, inevitably, their peers will have a huge role. Like they'll have a big role. So here's the thing that I say, and I'm going to tell the story. I have a younger sister, right? And so I went to QE, went to Cambridge University. I'm now doing this. My sister, she dropped out at school after her GCSEs. Tried to do A-levels 1 year, failed them. Tried them again at her ASs back then. She failed again. She dropped out. That's it. Gone. No university, no nothing, right? Here's the thing. Both of us now are happy. We're healthy. We have a great relationship with our parents, a great relationship with them and with each other. And we have jobs that we love and we're excelling at, right? So that's the first thing I say to parents is that don't prioritize your child's academic journey on top of having a relationship with them that is going to last, and their health and their happiness. I'd even say happiness with a bit of, because happiness is a complex thing, but their health, certainly. It shouldn't be prioritized, mental and physical, just for academic grades. A number of people I know have gone to Cambridge, got double firsts, gone into these law firms, and then had spiraled into burnouts and long-lasting depression because of these foundations they never had in terms of their relationship with their families or friends or anything like that. Sadly, it's higher than what I'd like it to be.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's really crazy, right? I mean, so many of your peers as well, you must see they're burning out in these careers they're in. And it actually reminds me, so I gave a talk to this group called the 11 Plus Journey, had over 6,000 parents on that group. And I actually made a comment about this, about how parents don't prioritize your child's academic success over their health, happiness, and relationship with you as a parent. And I actually had someone dislike my live comment as I said that. And I was just thinking, if there's someone who doesn't agree with that statement, what does that say about us as a parent? And one thing I ask all parents to do is to reflect and say, look, as parents, as anyone, every decision we make comes from these kind of two roots, we can call them: love-based emotions and fear-based emotions, right? Love-based, so peacefulness, abundance, trust, faith, joy, all of these things, and fear-based, so anger, envy, hatred, scarcity, poverty, lack of security, these kind of things. And as parents, here's the thing, right? You've been conditioned too, right? By your parents, who've been conditioned by their parents in some way. When you're passing on or projecting your fears onto your kids, right? Is it really yours, or is it your own parents' fears you're passing down to them, which is their parents' fears? The truth is that if, for those of you listening to this, I'd assume, touch wood, hopefully you're stable, you've got good jobs, you've raised your kids in a loving atmosphere and environment, the chances that your child will end up homeless or going through some serious issues with regards to their stability in their life is not as high as, say, our grandparents' would have been in a time of scarcity, war, poverty, these kind of things that they faced in their home countries, for example, right? Wherever they were. They could have been in the UK going through world wars. It's such a different situation, but those fears being passed on, they pass on through the behaviors we have. And so one thing I ask parents is check yourselves. When you tell your kids, I want you to excel academically, are you saying it out of your love for them because you want them to just have the best future they possibly can? Or are you saying it out of fear because of the fact that you worry they're going to end up homeless, that it's going to reflect on you as a bad parent, that you're going to be judged in your community, whatever it is? The answer is, honestly, it's a combination of both love and fear and these kind of emotions. And then what I ask parents to do is say, look, so here's the thing, there's both love in that and there's fear there. How can you change your tone, to change your tone of voice so that when you're communicating this to your kid, it comes from a place of love? Because they do not respond well to fear. That is the same stick voice that they have. And oftentimes your child's self-talk is the way that you spoke to them as a parent. Very interesting psychological phenomenon. It becomes the voice vessel you speak to your spouse with as well, and the voice with which you speak to them or other siblings. That becomes your child's self-talk. So, yeah, go for it.
No, you go for it.
Yeah. No, so it's just so fascinating. And when we kind of step back as parents and we go, okay, a lot of these things indirectly are having an impact here, right, on our child's development. We can't control so much. We can't control how they are in school. We can't control their peers. We can't control how they perhaps use or don't use social media or consume these different things. All we can control is how we relate to them, right? And let's stop doing this from a point of approach which our parents use on us, which is, I'm telling you this because this is how it is. It's my house, my roof, and we do this. Let's actually start communicating with them and asking them questions, get them to reflect for themselves and go, okay, how come you feel that way? The worst thing a kid's going to do in that situation is go, I don't want to talk about it and leave you be. But here's the thing as a parent, you've been heard. Your concern has been shown. They can go up and slam the door on you. But in their mind, you've just shown that you as a parent are available. Right, you're available, which means when they feel ready, they're going to feel more comfortable coming to you about it. A lot of us as parents, I think what happens is, we say something to our child like, how can I support you best right now? And they slam the door on us and say, leave me alone. And we go, well, I'm not going to try that anymore. And then you stop trying. And your kid feels like you're trying to separate from them. Your kid feels left out. They kind of want you to be potted plant parents, which is a term used by Dr. Lisa Dammer, who's a parenting expert. Great books she's written. I really recommend them. A potted plant parent. You're there in the background, but you're not taking up the foreground. You're there when you need them and you want to go and check out that plant, but you're not constantly in their face. And the analogy that she uses, which I love as well, I'm just going to share this because I think a lot of parents might find it useful, is imagine that this it's called the swimming pool analogy. Not quite the swimming in the muck, but it's a swimming pool analogy. Your child is swimming in a swimming pool of life, right? And they're swimming and swimming, and occasionally they get tired, they get exhausted, someone comes and dunks their head down, and they need to catch their breath. Then they swim to the edge of that pool, which is you, the parents. You are the edge of their swimming pool. The kid comes there, catches their breath, feels supported. Now here's the thing. The pool edge doesn't then keep the swimmer and hold them back from entering the pool again. The pool edge doesn't do any of that. The kid swims back into the pool and continues their life. Oftentimes they'll actually kick off the pool they kick off the edge of the pool to get back into the swimming pool, which is why sometimes after a kid's been really vulnerable with you, they'll kind of make fun of you or something and leave you alone and then like kind of leave you on that really bitter note. But it's because they're trying to assert their own independence as well. I think when you understand that your role in this is to be the edge of the supporting pool and for your kids to feel that, like that at any point, they can swim to that edge and feel supported. But they won't feel that if from a young age you are putting pressure on them in such a way to conform to something that they don't know why they're doing it. They don't know why. Kids can be surprisingly emotionally intelligent when you give them the chance. I use exercise I use with professionals on 11, 12-year-old kids, and you'll be surprised as to how self-aware some of them can be when asked the right questions. You know?
What are some of these key questions you're asking that relate to both the 40-year-old professional and the 11-year-old kid?
So it actually relates to an activity I do. So I do this activity with all of my clients called the life audit form. Basically, it's when we start off together because, you want to have a checklist. You want to have a way of tracking progress as to how our sessions are working, how they're moving towards their goals. And so if someone works with me, I like to think they understand that I'm quite a detailed person and I'm about optimizing performance means optimizing almost all areas of your life because as I'm sure you know, body transformation, everything is interweaved, everything is interconnected. So I actually get them to go through 32 different life categories as professionals, different small components of their life broken down to kind of 8 key ones. So we have, in terms of this life audit, we've got the relationship side, which has got 4 smaller categories, subcategories. We've got your daily life categories. We've got your nourishment category, so how you're feeling your body. You've got the well-being and health category. Then you've got emotional skills as a category, life skills as a category, self-talk related skills as a category, and then response to adversity skills. So resilience, bounce back ability, self-compassion, things like that. And so these categories are quite extensive in it. You often think, and I found with professionals and adults, oftentimes they've not reflected on these things for so long. They find it quite hard to actually assess their feelings on it. For a kid, I won't do all 32 categories because a lot of them won't know what things like resilience quite are just yet. But you'll be surprised as to how accurately they can go, I don't feel like I always know what I'm thinking or feeling, which is self-awareness. Or they'll go, yeah, when I'm feeling sad, I struggle to stick to my plan with studying or something like that, which is a good link. It's emotional versus your practical application of that, which opens room now for change. And they're so much more malleable at that stage to be able to be given a different idea that they can now try instead. Whereas as we're older, we're much more entrenched in our own skin, in our own way of being, our own identity, that's actually harder. So I've been constantly surprised at the kids who are engaged with this kind of stuff and questions. And I recommend to parents, if your kids are doing 11 plus exams, say, instead of telling them when to do it, ask them afterwards. How did that one go for you? Which questions do you feel you did well? Which ones do you think you've made silly mistakes on? And you'll be amazed as to how accurate they actually get at doing that. And that reflectiveness actually helps them to improve far quicker than if they would just do this, do that, get a mark, do this, do that. And the same goes as they go on. I say sometimes with parents, kids don't want to answer these questions to you, which is where external people can become quite helpful. Just as, if you ever try to, you actually did personal transformation coaching with your parents and your sister as well.
Yeah, it never worked. No, it never worked.
Never works.
No.
The people you love the most are often the hardest you're going to find to help. It's one of the tragedies of being in the personal growth industry. Those you love the most are those you can often help the least. Yeah. But I think once we acknowledge that and we go, actually, it's amazing because there's so many people around us that we can trust to help. Never worked, huh? Didn't it go so well?
No, they had to work with different coaches. So my sister works with Ed, mom works with Ed, and dad works with Ivan. So didn't work. I tried for 10 years, didn't work. They started with other coaches in the team, and they've got more results in the 6 months or 8 months so far than they have in over 8 years. So
psychological baggage, right?
crazy.
It's crazy.
So Cam, how can people find out more about what you do and learn more about some of your philosophies?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, the place I'm kind of getting more active. So social media wise, LinkedIn is the place where I'm currently at in terms of I'm more active there. That's where a lot of people who are professionals get in touch with me for speaking workshops, those kind of programs, and where groups of ambitious students who are already jumping on these platforms, age 16, 17, 18, looking for internships and stuff, also engage a lot there. In terms of information about what I do as well, my website's a great place to go, camtaj, kamtaj.com. And for those who are parents who are interested in the more academic side of things, I've got this website, I've got this program called Exam Success Academy, which can be accessed via my website. And with Exam Success Academy, it's broken down to 4 courses, online courses and videos, all of which come with videos, key point summaries, and activities to actually carry out. And so these 4 courses, we have time management and productivity for exam success, stress and mindset management for exam success, lifestyle optimization for exam success, and studying tools and learning techniques for exam success. And what I often recommend to parents is if your kids are in the age group, kind of in the, 6 to 12, 13 age group, I recommend it for the parents themselves, because not just will you learn some things, which these are tools I'll use as professionals, by the way, just in the context of exams, but those activities and those questions are ones at that stage when kids are more impressionable and more, they resonate with you as a parent more and look up to you. You can ask them these kind of questions to get them to think about these strategies. And when they might come to you for, I can't revise, and you go, well, here's this technique, it's been shown to work in this way. And if your kids are kind of more in the GCSE and A-level phase, the course was made for basically students who are, I actually made it at first for students who are in Cambridge and struggling with getting their grades at Cambridge. I now run it, so like QE Boys, for example, I've got a partnership with them where they offer it to students in year 11, 12 and 13 via the parents. So it's one of those things that GCSE, so students who are, 15 onwards till 21, 22, 23 can get utility from doing these courses themselves. So that's where you can find out the exam stuff. And aside from that, best way of all, just drop me an email, contact@camtaj.com. And, that's the best way, because I'll be happy to arrange a quick call, have a chat, find out more about how I can help. So
Awesome.
That's how you can hear about me. I wanted to ask you just really, really briefly, if I can as well,
Go ahead.
for the podcast, because I've been interested, because you have had such phenomenal growth, in what you're doing, and the content you've created that I see as original content, right? It's RNT, it's your content. No one else has things like this. You're kind of being a thought leader in your field, which is what I try to do as well and what I'm doing as well. And I'm just really curious, for you, how does that creative process work or come about?
Good question. It's one I get asked quite often with regards to creativity. And for me, what I found is I have specific times in my day that I'm allowed to be at my creative and most authentic self. When you're creating new things, new methodologies, new terminologies, it's very hard to do it unless you carve out a specific environment to do it in. For me, that's the morning. I'm in that sort of submersive trance state when I wake up, and I can get myself right into that flow state. I have a few precursors around music I use. I use the same music every day. Same place I sit, same routines of opening the laptop, which all kind of facilitates and acts as a precursor to being in that creative space. But that's really it. And then it's just a lot of sort of trial and error and just pushing things out there. And whether I publish it or not, it's the process of getting out of my head that really allows the few nuggets to come. Because what you'll find is, or what I found anyway, is that I'll create a lot and there'll be a few gems in there. Not everything's going to be a hit, right? If you do 100, probably 1 or 2 are going to be a hit. There's 1 or 2, then you dive in and go further. So for me, the biggest thing has been creating that environment for creativity. I do a lot of walking. So walking for me is a big one. I get a lot of ideas when I walk. I get a lot of ideas when I train, funnily enough. I always seem to keep a notes folder on my phone open when I'm training, because juices are just flowing. And then I think the biggest thing is two more things actually. Is the first would be just taking care of my physical self. If I'm on my A game physically, I'm going to be more creative. I'm not tired. I'm not thinking, how do I get through the day? Like everything just clicks, right? And then the last one is actually, yeah, exactly. The physical is the vehicle. And then the last one is being connected to a bigger purpose. So your creativity has a reason. I think that there's a lot of benefits to just being creative for being creative. I think there's tons of benefits in that. But I think you get your best creativity when you know you're doing it for a purpose that's bigger than yourself. And when you combine all those elements together, I think you can give yourself, you can set yourself up for good creativity, if that helps.
Love that, man. I love that. It's so good to kind of trade notes with that. And honestly, man, I said, I'm so inspired by your journey, your company's journey. And I love the podcasts. I genuinely loved like listening to it. I find them so said always ideas come from them. And as you said, those gems, physical is the vehicle, your 5 stages, 3 S's, these kind of things. I look at them and I go, that's exactly it. Like you're channeling something there, and it's never the first idea. It's something which you had an idea, an inkling of, and then something else came and then it disappeared and you went through it.
The other thing I'd add is a lot of collaboration as well. So
yeah,
that's something I'd recommend for anyone who's creative is surround yourself with other people who are creative. I'm lucky to have some really creative people on the team, and we bounce ideas all the time, and a lot of things come from collaboration there. So that's another missing element of it, in that it's very rarely a singular process. Like we're not creating things which are completely brand new. It's typically something which is like an amalgamation of different things that have come in the past, and you put your own unique twist on it.
Which is what most of creativity really is. It's decided there are no completely new, pure original ideas. It is just a new synthesis. It's a way of synthesizing it in a different way, presenting it in a different way. Ideally one that is more clear, or it resonates, or it just has a different analogy associated with it. So I love that, man. I said, congrats on the book. I'm getting it for my, it's going to sound terrible, I'm getting it for my girlfriend as a birthday present. She's asked me for it as a birthday present.
Oh, wow, nice. That's amazing.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be doing any PT work with her or anything like that. But I said, I've been
outsourcing that, yeah.
She will not take it from me, man. You know that better than anyone. It's not going to work like that. But she's said, I've been showing her a lot, she's been seeing a lot of these before and after pics that you guys have been doing. And I love them again. The transformation. So anyone listening to this, by the way, who's in the RNT process, I admire you guys so much. I think it's incredible. Genuinely what you guys are doing, it is a journey of self-discovery, legitimately. So congrats on the book, congrats on the course programs, and congrats on the engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today on this episode of RNT Fitness Radio. I'd love for you to do a quick little favor for us. Please head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, leave a comment, and share it with your family and friends. If you're interested in learning more about how to transform your body and positively change your life, go to www.rntfitness.com and explore all our free content on offer. Thank you.